for sure. And welcome to this section of the Future of Education International Conference. It's summer. Florence is for sure attractive for a lot of people, so I think that a lot of people just went around, but this is going to be a kind of a special section of the conference because with a specific title, which is a futuristic paradigm to teach and learn Italian language, the Pastille European project. And why a special section? Because in addition to being rooted within the thematic areas of the Future of Education International Conference, it is also an event organized in the framework of the Pastille European project. The subtitle of the project is European Arts and Tradition in Italian Language Learning. So this section is composed by two different speeches, plus a roundtable, but then we will see if we are able to have a roundtable, or maybe it would be better just to have an exchange of ideas and comments about the project itself. So the first speech will be held by me, how digital tools impact on the learning, speaking, reading, and writing language skills, with a specific reference to the didactic units which have been produced in the framework of the Pastille European project. The second speech will be held by Gianluca Olcese from University of Wrocław, who is coordinator of the Pastille European project. The title of the speech is The Role of Cultural Heritage in Education, the case study of the Pastille European project. So for sure, Gianluca will have to teach me how to have coolest picture of myself, because the comparison between the two pictures is quite embarrassing. But anyway, I would start with my speech, and I will start with a quotation. Speaking about Italian language in Firenze is like eating pizza in Napoli, going to see Colosseo in Roma, floating down Venezia on a gondola. I have really few experience of speaking in front of an important audience. But what I learned in my experience is that it would be better to start with a quotation. And if you are asking who is the author of such a stupidity like the sentence behind me, it's quite normal that you don't know who is the author of this stupidity, because the author is me. But anyway, behind this banality, there are some interesting points that I would like to underline. First of all, I have been using Firenze instead of Florence, Napoli instead of Naples, Colosseo instead of Colosseum, Roma instead of Rome, Venezia instead of Venice, because the Pastille European project is dealing with Italian language, and we Italians should be a bit prouder of what we have, taking care of our treasures and calling them with their real name. This thesis was also let's say, it was pretty exploited during the fascism, but I guarantee that my speech will not cutting across a march towards Rome, or better, Roma. Secondly, in a simple sentence, I enlisted some of the main treasures belonging to Italy and to the Italian culture. And the Pastille European project is deeply dropped into the Italian culture. Anyway, I've been mentioning quite stereotyped examples of Italian culture. Because anyway, when we speak about culture, Italian culture, there are some recurrent stereotypes. I can ask you which are the main ideas that come up to your mind while thinking about Italy. Maybe with a bigger audience, I would have received replies like pizza, pasta, and mandolino. But for sure, I can guarantee that Italy is not just pizza, pasta, and mandolino. And it is not just the images that you can find on each postcard about Italy. Italy is the leaning tower, or better, if I want to be consistent to what I said before, Italy is La Torre di Pisa, as well as the city life district in Milano. And in this case, city life is the real name, so there is no real translation for that. Italy is Dante and La Divina Commedia, as well as Camilleri and Commissario Montalbano. Italy is Caravaggio for sure, but Italy is also Maurizio Cattelan. So we as Italians should be able to refresh the idea of culture that we spread in the world. And the Pastille project guides its users towards a complete travel around the Italian culture and in all its elements. Thirdly, in my simple sentence, so the one I started, the quotation I started, there are evidently some true elements. You can't go to Napoli without eating pizza and baba and sfogliatella, and it is quite evident that Napoli contributed to my current silhouette. But as well as you can't go to Roma without visiting the Colosseo. But do you know that there is also the so-called the Futuristic Colosseo Quadrato? As well as we cannot avoid, and we have to admit that Firenze is for sure the best place to speak about the Italian language, because Firenze has long been considered as the cradle of the Italian language. And here we are with the Pastille project, which was funded by the Erasmus Plus program, Strategic Partnership for Higher Education. Higher education because the partners of this European project are universities plus Pixel, 5 universities plus Pixel. Because we have the University of Wroclaw, here represented by Gianluca Olcese, who is the project, and Nina, who is the project applicant of this project proposal. Then we have all the other partners, the University of Olomouc from Czech Republic, University of Macedonia from Greece, University of Genova, Italy again, and the University of Vilnius from Lithuania. So which are the objectives of the Pastille European project? The Pastille project wants to create an innovative teaching method for Italian as foreign language. How? By offering a new high-level educational teaching method for Italian as a foreign language, which is focused on an interdisciplinary approach, by enhancing the motivation of Italian language learners to improve their linguistic skills and cultural competencies, and by increasing the chances of Italian language learners on the local and international labor markets. The target groups of this European project are university lecturers, researchers, and students. But the products we have been working on within this project can be easily used also by students and any other kind of school of institution dealing with teaching Italian language as second language. Because I've been mentioning the project outputs, which are now project results. The main project results are 4 different intellectual outputs: the methodological guidelines, the didactic units, the reference textbook, and audiovisual and multimedia materials. So let's start with the methodological guidelines. All the results of the project are available on the project website. So the methodological guidelines are designed to address to the needs of university teachers and researchers of Italian language and university students. The guidelines offer practical methodologies on how lectures should be organized to make reference to cultural topics. So once again, culture and language together. The most innovative aspect of the guidelines, and it is possible to download the guidelines which are both in English and in Italian, is related to the implementation of a new teaching praxis that enhances the use of original cultural and artistic material as a means to teach and learn Italian. The second intellectual output we have been working together, and Gianluca will focus on this intellectual output as well, are the didactic units, which aim at providing language students with the opportunity to get in touch with the Italian culture, stimulating divergent thinking and motivation. The didactic units have been designed to enable the implementation of more effective approaches to language education. So the didactic units, as you can see from this screenshot, but once again, the results are available on the project website, they are divided into 6 different levels belonging to the common European framework of reference for languages. So this framework actually applies to every European language, and it is adopted in Europe after its publication by the Council of Europe that recommended its adoption in order to build a common validation system for language skills. Which are the main objectives of this framework? First of all, to objectively define all the linguistic abilities of an ideal native speaker, taking into account the common and pre-established parameters of all European languages, with the aim of describing the different language levels. The other objectives of this framework: to provide language professionals across Europe with a common and transparent frame, to contribute to overcoming communication obstacles arising from different European education systems, to promote multilingualism, which is quite a recurrent keyword today in the choice of languages, to support the development of multilingual profile of individual learners, to support teachers training and the cooperation between teachers of different languages, to improve quality and success in learning, teaching, and assessment, and to facilitate the transparency in tests and the comparability of certifications. Anyway, the core of the framework is represented by a descriptive scheme that defines 4 modes of activity and strategies of communicative language, general skills that include the ability to learn and the communicative language skills, and what is more interesting for us and for the project, a global scale for common reference levels, in particular about the levels which have been identified within this framework. There are 3 progressive levels, and each of them is divided into 2 further sub-levels. Each level outlines the language proficiency profile that each learner should develop, taking into consideration the 4 basic linguistic skills, the one that I mentioned in the title of this speech: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. More concretely, the 3 levels are the following. The basic user elementary level is divided into 2 sub-levels: A1, breakthrough or beginner, and A2, wastage or elementary. Then we have the independent user level divided into 2 sub-levels: B1, thresholds and or intermediate, and B2, vantage or upper intermediate. And finally, the proficient user level, which is divided into 2 sub-levels: C1, effective operational proficiency level or advanced. Finally, C2, mastery of proficiency. And those levels have been taken into account for the production of the Pastille didactic units. So let's see together one of the didactic units produced in the framework of the projects. I will be describing the level, it is the level unit A8 of the A1 level. So this screenshot, once again, it represents exactly the level we are in, but I guarantee that all the didactic units have the same structure. As you can see, each didactic unit has its own title. In this case, l'Italia con gusto, the Italian taste. Each didactic unit has specific objectives. In this case, it is pronomi, volerci e metterci, interrogativi, esclamativi, which is pronouns, interrogative pronouns, and exclamation pronouns. And each didactic unit has the related chapter of the reference textbook addressed to teachers who want to use those materials in their classes. So let's go inside these didactic units. And for all of them, there is an introductory image, in this case, a painting by Giorgio De Chirico. And here again, I would like to underline, first of all, how the objective of teaching and learning the Italian language is supported, is helped, and I would say it is based on the Italian culture, because a language which is vivid per definition is the reflex of the equally vivid culture it represents, and the other way around. It is impossible to learn a foreign language without experiencing the culture that that language is vehicle of. On the other hand, it is impossible to study a foreign culture without a preliminary knowledge of the language linked to that culture. The second aspect I would like to underline for this image is the direct link between language and culture, and the cultural elements which have been identified, in this case the portrait by De Chirico, belong to a less known and less widespread tradition, I mean, De Chirico is one of the main artists of the last century, but how many foreign students know De Chirico? And even more, how many Italian students know De Chirico? That's why the idea was also to look for those cultural elements which are less known at world level and which could be useful for foreign students who decide to start learning Italian language. Immediately below the introductory image for each didactic unit, there are some clearly defined communicative and grammatical objectives. Before starting the didactic unit, each student is asked to carry out an entrance test, which is composed by questions belonging to the following categories: true-false questions, fill in the space questions, and multiple choices question with 3 or 5 possible solutions. Then immediately after the entrance test, we access to the core of the didactic unit, composed by the didactic resources identified for that specific unit. The resources are divided into, let's say, normal resources and reinforcement resources. And the identified resources are audio resources, visual resources, text, and images. The audio resources are MP4 files through which students can exercise their listening skills. Visual resources are videos. Some of them are taken from YouTube. Others have been specifically produced within this project. In this case, for this specific didactic unit, it is an extract from a film by Totò, a famous Italian comedian. And once again, it is possible to learn the Italian language through a film extract. Even more, it is not a film which is well known at, let's say, national or world level, but it is anyway a film belonging to our culture and our tradition. So once again, I would like to underline this strong connection between the project and the idea of culture in all its perspectives, and tradition as well. About the text resources, text resource is evidently a text. In this case, it is a recipe. Why not a recipe in a didactic unit dealing with the Italian taste? Why not a recipe to learn a foreign language? Or is there a better tool than a recipe to develop the knowledge of a foreign culture? This time I would like to underline how for each resource that was identified and uploaded within the platform that we created some boxes which were called in Pastille, as you can see, which means small pills of information, which is also consistent with the name of the project, providing information about grammar, about Italy, Italians, and glossary. In this case, as the topic of the recipe is the famous pasta alla matriciana, the in Pastille boxes provide information about Amatrice, which is a famous town for the best Italian lards, and about this pasta as well. But for all the resources that we identified, there are those boxes that, again, we called in Pastille. And then we have also the image resources. An image resource is evidently an image. In this case, a painting by Guttuso, La Vucceria, a famous district of Palermo, Sicily, and with its noisy market. Can you see, it's quite difficult, the dates of the painting? It is 1974. And I can guarantee that in almost no Italian grammar, you will find so updated images. And this is, in my opinion, one of the strengths of the project, using updated materials in order to speak about Italian culture. You will find some resources, some images belonging to our past tradition, but you will find for sure some other resources belonging to our modern idea of culture. So about the painting, it offers the right opportunity to present the Italian market, because the market are part of the Italian culture. So the painting offers the right opportunity to present the Italian markets to foreign people, to deeply analyze the specific aspects of the Italian culture, to introduce Guttuso as painter, and to discuss about grammar elements of the Italian language. For each identified resource, one or more exercises have been created and uploaded on the project platform. Then students have the opportunity to practice with one or all the didactic resources which have been identified for each didactic unit. At the end, they are asked to provide a feedback about the didactic unit they just completed and to carry out, as well as they did the entrance test, to do the final test, which allow them to download the obtained results on a PDF document and to send them to their teacher. So this was my speech about the project with a specific focus on the didactic units. I will now leave the floor to Gianluca, who will continue presenting the Pastille project. And once again, there will be a focus on the didactic units, which could be used by teachers, students, and so on.
Mi metto lì?
Assolutamente.
Se posso mettere il computer al posto dei tuoi appunti. Così. Sì, sì. Ok, grazie. Perfetto. It's an interrogation. Thank you, Antonio, for the introduction. Let me explain why my photo is better than yours, because I always use authentic material of artistic value. This was a photo taken by a good friend, Tobias Papuchis, shortly before his exhibition in Genoa, which was in 2019. And it was one of the exhibition organized by the photographer Alberto Terrile, which is one of the photographer which gave us their masterpiece for our didactic units of the museum, because in the third part image, there is the photo of Antonio Guerci, which was taken during his the conference for his retirement. So, and let me thank you, Pixel, for the organization of this multiplier event and allowing me to take part to it. This presentation is not only the result of my research and I don't work alone. So Anna Siri, the colleague of the University of Genoa, which is an official partner of the project, and we prepared together the slides. This is not the slides, but I mean the presentation. So this is some information about the project. So this we are going to end, and it was a very difficult period, because we started in December 2019. And the project was structured for a real involvement in real life involvement of the students in contact with real life objects, and not only through a platform or online classes, but furthermore, we were willing to bring them to know the relationship between their countries and Italy, and vice versa. So to show that culture is not a monolith that it's built in a small area of our planet, but it's a continuous exchange of information. Those are the partners. So we have different countries for of a different language, and we can say that the group was chosen to well represent European different language area. So everybody speaks English. This is clear, and we had also Slavic, Baltic, Romance language countries and Greek. To well represent all the cradle of culture, the formal cradle of culture, and the way that this culture has influenced other parts of Northern Europe and back, because the movement of people are continuously and will continue in the following years. We have different platform, different channel to promote and to let people get in touch with the results of our project, not only the official website, but also a Facebook group where people are invited to discuss if they have questions or problem. It's like not only question and answer, but it's also possible to present activities which are related with Pastille subjects. This is the group. This is the YouTube channel. And now I will switch to the most specific topic of the project, because we start with thinking about cultural heritage. Why people study Italian? Italy, it's a small country where in comparison to language which are most studied at world level, and Italian is the second language spoken by mother language speakers in Europe. But it's as I said, in comparison to English, which is spoken in three continents, 4 continents officially, maybe 5. French is not only in France, so we have also the former colonies which also speaks French as an official language. Spanish, Portuguese. Italian is always between the first 3 or 4 foreign language which is learned. Why people learn Italian? This is the question that we asked ourselves, because of the role of the cultural heritage. The topic about Italian cuisine, it's like Troy's horse to enter into people life, people real contact with their 5 senses to some tradition, and then with some language aspect. We said, as we said, it's not only Italian tradition, but it's a Mediterranean tradition, because Italy, it's one of the most important countries of the Mediterranean diet, which is one of the UNESCO heritage subject to be protected. So culture is a cross-cutting feature in sustainable development, social, environmental, and economic dimension, and related actions to support inclusion, diversity, identity, participation, creativity, and innovation. It's also a powerful driver of development towards improving and promoting the quality of lifestyle. For the first time in a global action program, the 2030 agenda has included several references to specific aspects of culturally based development, qualifying it as a shared scenario for all current policy direction related to heritage, landscape protection, creativity, interculturalism, digital, and education. Within this framework, in 2019, UNESCO published Culture 2030 Indicators, a set of qualitative, quantitative, thematic indicators to measure and monitor the contribution of culture itself to sustainability, promoting educational and training actions on culture and heritage values is a condition for the future sustainability of the cultural and creative sectors. Investing in education and an ongoing education effort to enable citizens and communities to contribute to regenerative processes is therefore crucial. It is one of the objectives of the Rome Declaration of the G20 Culture Ministers meeting on the role of education in achieving the strategic sustainability goals. UNESCO launched the Education for Sustainable Development roadmap, ESD 2030 initiative in 2 years ago, presented recently in Berlin in May 2021. And it was also placed at the center of the global meeting on education from recovery to accelerating progress towards sustainable development goal. The topic of the right to inclusive and equitable quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all, the contribution of education to and through cultural heritage plays a not secondary role. One of the most important aspects of Pastille project is this following of theoretical and philosophical aspects through the psychology of the Gestalt and used by Italian scholars, Vedovelli, Diadori, Balboni, which are the most important researcher in Italy. And this approach is an evolution of the three main aspects of education: the formal education, informal, and non-formal education. So we have theory, practical activities, and inside of teaching institution and outside. So this is why we learn Italian now as a real life, and not only Italian, as a real life environment with activities related to concrete objects of everyday life. So we are not focusing on grammatical aspects, but how we can achieve a result. What do we need to achieve this result in doing something, bring further a conversation, in obtaining a practical thing. The definition of formal learning is intentional, and follows a program that learning is the goal of all activities in which students engage. We can think, simplifying, that formal learning is something that we do inside the school, inside the university, inside a formal curriculum. Foreigners, for example, engage in formal learning when they attend at a university course in a language of their host community, with a syllabus containing the communicative repertoire to be achieved. Non-formal learning, on the other hand, arises from a learner's conscious decision to master a particular activity, skill, or area of knowledge, and is thus the result of an intentional effort and takes place outside formal learning environments, but within some organizational structure. Some modes of non-formal learning become increasingly formal as learners become more proficient. Think, for example, of music and other performing arts examination. Informal learning takes place outside schools and university and arises from the learner's involvement in activities that are not undertaken with a learning purpose. It is an involuntary and an inescapable part of everyday life. For this reason, it is sometimes called experiential learning. This definition and distinctions help us to understand the complexity of effective language learning. For example, adults learn a second or subsequent language in a naturalistic way, when they do so by living among and interactive with speakers of the language daily. Their emerging communicative repertoire is not shaped by a conscious learning program, but by their attempt to satisfy social, cultural, and material needs. These are examples of informal learning. This is why the project starts from European arts and traditions in Italian language learning. The didactic units have as topics arts, literature, music, dance, visual arts, theater, cinema, and all those aspects are interconnected, and we see behaviors, beliefs, perceptions, rules and values, social connections, customs, celebration, rituals, conventions, and policy forms. Some such things are currently being used as example of didactic units in language learning, but they are also very important in a language that should be used in real life purpose. If we think of a formal meeting, a business meeting, or a formal school and university behavior, there are policy forms that we learn naturally during our experience, but it is not so obvious for foreign students. Luckily, in Europe, we can understand each other very well, but in different countries are slightly far activities and way of thinking. This is why language and culture are strictly connected. As many linguistics showed, we have also a common identity a common route that developed in different direction. This is why our project aimed also to historical grammar and evolution of society, and this is also the topic of the third intellectual output, which is the reference textbook. And in a practical way, in a theoretical way, the methodological guidelines that Antonio just before me well presented. And let me introduce the unit that we present for advanced student. And this is an invitation to the Museum of Ethnomedicine, Antonio Scarpa. When we had last week the staff training event, we decided to bring our host to visit museum, and we also involved a tourist guide to show them which are the connection between Poland, Wrocław, and Italy. So we visited the places where representative of Italian culture have been, or where objects coming from Italy are placed, and reproduction that are inspired by Italian art tradition and music and so on. So the museum in Genoa is exactly the opposite, because we choose a museum which the specific is to show that we are one people, one human race, and we are strictly, our roots are strictly connected. And furthermore, this museum focuses on medicine and health. So we also focused to a specific sector of language. And we will show some resource. As I introduced the project, I present that there are some theoretical basis. So the classroom, the lessons has 7 moments from the first part, the global part is like a motivational part, and the final part is the part where the student becomes aware of the progress he made, because the awareness is also a meta learning. So it means learning to learn, and to have an evidence that learning progress has had an effect. So we spend some hours. Each unit is organized in a time lapse of 8 hours, that the student after 8 hours has been able to learn the things that we showed them at the beginning. So a kind of expectancy grammar, that they are aware that they will learn, and the effect make them more active to go further with the language learning. The first one is contextualizing the context, and in this case we are explaining what is medical anthropology and the history of one of the main experts in this section. Quanto tempo ho parlato? No, okay. Which was Piero Coppo, and is considered the father of ethnopsychiatry, and he was a link between the 5 continents and Italy, So how also the other countries influence Italy, and Italy influence therefore other countries. It's a continuous exchange. The second part is image. Here we enter in a more specific aspect of communicative structure, and not only the word to use the parts of the body, but how the parts of the body are used in proverbs or metaphorical sentences, or how sometimes we use body parts to describe some geographical topics, like an arm of a river in Italian, un braccio del fiume. This very often cannot be translated literally to other language. So we should explain how to form and to understand this idea. And here we have also some information about what the museum hosts. This is a small thing used to show where the body pains. But it is strange that it's not so far from our culture, because today we had for 2 years the difficulty to show to a doctor, to meet a real doctor in a real life situation. So we often had to show where the body pains through a camera or through explanation. So in China, thousands of years ago, they used this model where a woman could easily explain where it hurts. It's the activities are also morphosyntactic. So in this unit, we also managed incidental phrases. So the structure of the sentence, we are talking about the highest level, C2. It's the lower level is A1, the highest is C2 from the European framework of language. So the students can create phrases that are not reproducing the structure of a sentence in their own language. So the incidental is something that it's in the middle of the phrase, like by chance, and we use this also as a communicative object. And we start also to talk about a concrete problem, to talk about health, and to talk about our feeling. The text in that which we used for this unit are from the archive of the Antonio Scarpa Museum, and they are made by Antonio Scarpa himself. The texts are from a real author, well-known author, which is Antonio Scarpa, a doctor that traveled for far more than 50 years. He died when he was almost 100 years old. And from Antonio Guerci, who was his the one and only disciple that he had in his more than 50 years of careers. And those texts are representing a structure for an adequate level of difficulty and a motivation and a cultural heritage focus. So the students is not learning only how to form this incidental sentence, but also to manage and to acquire information about, in this case, health and information related to health and information related to countries far from Italy, and the results of these studies have been an important information at global level achieved but by an Italian scholar. In this case, we are talking about agravidic lactation. This is when a child is born and his or her mother is not present because of many situations, because of illness, because she died, because she has not the milk. And this research is fundamental to give the possibility to children to eat since their very first days of life. So to save the life of children without using of external chemical or difficult to find products. So the I will close this I hope not too long presentation to this unit and to this project to underline that cultural elements of artistic value add relevance and motivation to the learning process. Studying in a different language is fundamental to realizing the potential of our multicultural and multilingual environment that requires mutual understanding. The innovative aspect of the Pastille project lies in its contribution to developing mixed linguistic and cultural competence. The focus on common heritage is unusual and as a starting point for language learning. Literary and popular sources, cultural and artistic records, and any other kind of authentic artistic material are a new element that requires interdisciplinary, sociological, historical, and ethno-anthropological analysis, especially for readers coming from other cultures. Thank you.
Okay, so is there any question about